Welcome to the Faith, Hope, and Payroll podcast, where we talk business, leadership, and payroll from a Christian worldview. Join us as we dive into the real-life decisions that shape the people behind every organization. The world offers darkness. Journey with us as we seek the light of the world. Hey everyone, welcome to the brand new podcast of Faith, Family, and Payroll. It is a little bit of a play on words. The actual quotes, faith, hope, and love. The greatest of these is love. The greatest of these is not necessarily payroll, but it's definitely up there. I've got my co-host, Mr. Francinello.
Hello, Eric. So Eric, actually I'm going to stop you, and we're going to have to go back because you said faith, family, and payroll. It's faith,
Did
hope,
I really?
And payroll. Well, that's because in some of the questions
that's what I was
wrote
reading.
up,
You put the wrong
it's
thing
my
on.
fault. It's my fault. So
I don't know what we
our
decided
new
to call this
podcast
thing.
is faith, hope, and payroll. So, and I want to add to it the catchphrase, at least, that it's the payroll podcast you never knew you needed, but you can't live without.
The Payroll podcast you never knew you needed, but you can't live without. I love it.
Yeah. Well, so I guess we're going to be interviewing each other today, talking about why we're doing this. So why did we start this podcast?
So just to clarify, for those people that I've already confused, our podcast is actually called Faith, Hope, and Payroll. This is the first episode. Please bear with us. The first topic we wanted to go over was faith, family, and payroll. I got it mixed up. Mea culpa, mea maxima culpa. Why are we doing this? In today's society, we've become very polarized. For example, Republicans hate Democrats, Democrats hate Republicans, traditionalists hate liberals, liberals hate traditionalists. It's all very, very sad all around. And that's not what this is about. We're going to talk politics because it makes sense sometimes, but it's going to be like a non-political, political commentary. So that's where the hope comes in, because our hope is not in politics. Our hope is not in humans per se. Our hope's higher than that. That's where the faith comes in. Our hope is in God and in Jesus Christ specifically. So why payroll, though? Because it's love. Payroll is getting your people paid so that they do a good job for you. People, I don't like referring to them as assets, but they are your biggest asset, your greatest asset, your most valuable asset. So faith, hope, payroll. That's why we're doing this, Dave.
Yep. And I mean, we're a payroll company, so, obviously we hope that people want to do business with us, but we're two guys that also love talking about payroll. So
absolutely.
As funny as that sounds, I do like talking about payroll. So like getting to the bottom of payroll issues. Sometimes I talk to my family about payroll and it bores them, but if I find something that interesting that came up, I want to talk about it. So
I've taken my wife to a couple payroll conferences, Dave. I don't know if you have. And she goes because there's free alcohol and she gets to go to Florida. But when we're at the mixers where the spouses can join in, she literally just feels like she wants to be anywhere else in that moment because talking about payroll is a little dry for her. But Dave and I love it.
So I did take my wife to one recently, not too long ago in Grand Rapids. But and you say that I should take my wife to everything because my wife just loves mingling and she introduces me to people. And so it's very helpful. And she always says, "Oh, you should do payroll with my husband." So she asks the questions that I don't always. So it's great.
Maybe we need to get the wives on one of these. Actually, that'd be a fun one.
I think we do. I was thinking we could bring the wives, the kids on. But I hope that people will get a couple of things out of this podcast. So I think sometimes we'll do payroll topics. So hopefully people can learn. We'll do kind of life lessons topics, and maybe I'm not an expert on all of life, but hopefully people can take away from our experiences. And I hope business owners, professionals, hopefully my friends, hopefully our family will listen to this and get something out of it, or at least boost our listenership, right?
Amen.
So let's get into it. I met somebody for lunch yesterday, and they were asking a little bit about our company in the background. And I was telling them, where things kind of got started, where you got started with the business. And then I said, but honestly, I said, I don't know that I know Eric's whole story. And I said, maybe I'll find out tomorrow when we do our first podcast. So that segues into, I guess, tell me about, I know a little bit about when you tell me a little bit about when you came into the business. Tell me first why you started in payroll.
Yeah, I didn't start in payroll, actually.
Okay.
I started actually in more accounting generic. I had a business partner at the time, Shyla. This was in probably 2011, I think is when I met Shyla.
Okay.
We started Your Financial Solutions, a small boutique bookkeeping and tax practice. We started that, I believe, was in 2013. We did that for quite a few years, but we realized we needed to have a payroll component because we didn't want to kind of be beholden necessarily to tax deposits, forms being filed as of certain times, things of that nature. So we actually had a professor that we had both known in college. We had both gone to Siena Heights University, and she owned a CPA firm, and she was just starting up a payroll division because, I like to think of it the old Ford model. You used to sit at one car and you kind of did everything about the car. The mechanic kind of put the whole car together kind of in the one spot. And then they transitioned to an assembly line model where you became very, very good at one or two components of building that car. And then the next guy next to you got really good at a couple components and so on. That was the model she was going towards. So she had people basically just sitting there doing payroll, making the pay statements, scheduling the tax deposits, tax forms, bank deposits, all of that. And became very, very inefficient. So she went to go partner with a software company called SaaS HR at the time. And that was a dedicated payroll solution that integrated in with QuickBooks, is what many of her clients were on. And we reached out to her and said, hey, do you know a payroll company that we can partner with YFS, Your Financial Solutions, so that we can get our clients on payroll, not necessarily send them to another firm that might take their bookkeeping too, and, we can create a little bit of a synergy there. So long story short, we did partner with her. Shyla and I were working at a common company in Canton, Michigan for a pharmaceutical/manufacturing company. And I was let go all of a sudden right before Thanksgiving and not sure what to do next. So reached out to Donna and said, hey, this is what's going on. Do you want me to come on board and we can help grow the payroll company more and we'll do our bookkeeping on the side? Donna said yes immediately. And that was in, I think, I'd have to go look. That was probably 2013, 2014. It's about the same time. I guess I'd have to look at this point. But it's been over 10 years now, easily. So basically started on the ground floor, reimagining the payroll company, the procedures, bought in immediately. And now Donna and I, Shyla got married a few years ago, still friends, but she wanted to grow a IT consulting business with her now husband, and they're a client still, and they're doing that. So Donna and I kind of, I run the payroll company. I own the payroll company. Donna's a shareholder as well. She still has her own CPA firm, which is separate from us, but we do share clients with her and other bookkeepers and other CPAs, tax agencies. So that's kind of where we are today. So it's kind of been a growth strategy. Our first payroll was ran in 2011. I joined a couple years later, and then here we are in 2026. So we're like 15 years now almost. So yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, I did. So I knew some of that story. I knew there was bookkeeping someplace in the history because you talk about doing that. I didn't realize that whole story. So actually, I was looking back as I went to a networking event recently and had to do kind of a spotlight on us. And I was looking back at when Shyla did. I think I was telling you about this, where she did a plank during the presentation. But I also saw that Ben Torres was one of your early clients. She mentioned that in that meeting. So when you took over, when you came in to the business, how many payroll clients did Workforce PayHub? Well, it wasn't Workforce PayHub then, was it?
It was. So you've got Kleenex is kind of the generic name and the brand name for tissue paper, because nobody calls it tissue paper, but tissues, whatever. So we were Workforce Management Solutions, Inc., which is the Kleenex of this entire industry.
Yeah.
So we that was one of the first things we changed. We went from Workforce Management Solutions, Inc. to Workforce PayHub, Inc. And that change was within the first year of me coming on board. So, yeah. I like our new name better, honestly.
Yeah.
I like our new logo better, too. I think we still have the old logo. I'll have to show it to you sometime.
So how many clients did you start with?
We had about 100. I don't even know if we had 100. It was about 100 clients at the time. Those were all clients from Donna's CPA firm at the time. We've grown quite a bit. We've got about 550 clients now, and a minority are with her firm. And we've got a good number from other firms, and the majority of our clients have found us online or client referrals, word of mouth, opening up businesses. We are located in downtown Adrian, so we do a lot of the downtown Adrian businesses because they can literally just walk to us. It's super convenient.
So 100 is a good starting point, right? I guess, what I've done over the years is talk to people about their payroll businesses, and we'll get into that later. But so that's obviously a great starting point. But is there any point in the early years that you wondered if this was going to work?
No. I saw the writing on the wall. Company needed to kind of be, streamlined processes, created, some instead of doing let me do everything about this payroll and then move on to the next payroll. We started doing batch processing, which was a huge increase. Still the one-on-one customer service on the front end with the clients. Payrolls getting ran individually, but instead of doing the banking transactions after every payroll ran, we started to batch process those twice a day, one in the middle of the day, one at the end of the day. And honestly, it cut down on over 50% in processing time, because we were able to do what was taken basically, 5 to 10 minutes every payroll. We are now getting done in like 10 to 15 minutes for all payrolls ran in that day. So great efficiencies were created early on. I also wanted to clarify, because I like numbers. We started Your Financial Solutions. It was May of 2013. And then I started with Workforce in November of 2013. Okay. So
I thought it had to be pretty quick when you were going over that, because I had looked back and I thought you started here.
I thought it was same year too, but I wasn't sure if it was 1 year apart. I couldn't remember.
Yeah. So, you were a new business owner. You're young, Eric. You're a lot younger than me. So you were a lot younger back then. Did you have a mentor that you kind of, and maybe I already know the answer to that, but did you have a mentor that kind of helped you with the business?
Oh, in the business itself?
Well, yeah, helped you to keep plowing forward. Somebody you leaned on.
So Shiloh was a couple years older than me too. It was kind of nice because we had two. Donna's always been helpful whenever it comes to the business. We have questions or whatever. If I want to run something by her, she always makes herself available. But her primary focus, she's a professor at a local college, Adrian College, and then she has her CPA firm, and she's got quite a few kids herself. So she's kind of hands off in a good way, not a negative way with the payroll company. But when we have questions, you could always go and ask her what her thoughts were or whatnot. But early on, it was probably Shiloh and I basically just talking to other business owners, especially our clients, to be honest. So Ben Torres, a good friend now, he was the first client we sold into our bookkeeping firm. He was our very first client. And we also brought him over into the payroll company later that year. So, he's had a very successful business too. He's a State Farm agent. He runs a few agencies here in Michigan. So, Ben, this is a plug. I expect some reciprocity. So
let's do a plug for Faith then too. So you, like I said, you're a young guy. I'm sure you've grown in your faith over the years. For me, a lot of times, I don't really necessarily.
Let's pause right here, Dave. Actually, let's pause. Before we get into faith, that's important. Yeah. Let's go back to your start real quick, because you've been, you've got a year or two on me, and you've been in payroll Almost as long as I've been born. No, I'm joking. But let's talk about your start, because you've been in payroll actually longer than I have.
I have, yeah. And I knew at a young age I wanted to get into payroll, right? Probably at some point
2-3 years old is like, payroll's the money.
Yeah. At some point I realized I couldn't just be a cowboy motorcycle man. That's what I said I wanted to be when I was a really little kid. Probably by the time I hit middle school, I said, I got to do something serious. But that's not really true. Not how I ended up in payroll. So, I thought I'd do a couple different things going through college. I really thought I'd be some sort of automotive engineer. There was too much math. The math got too hard.
So let's go into payroll. Okay.
Payroll's got math, but out of school, I did a couple of things. I actually did start in, auto parts retail as a manager. And then I got into a larger tax and accounting company. I started in technical support. And I was not a computer guy, so it was a little eye-opening when they first said I had to install the program and change the file path, and I had no idea what they were talking about in my first training. Like, what do you mean change the file path? I got decent at that stuff over the years, but I started supporting a piece of software that did bookkeeping and payroll. I started supporting after-the-fact payroll. And we actually had something happen in the office yesterday that reminded me of my early days, and kind of why I gravitated towards liking payroll, because I like to understand things. So I remember, taking technical support calls, and sometimes people wanted to understand, like, why isn't it withholding any federal, income tax here? And in that program, you could drill down and you could see the calculation it was doing, right? It would look at the historical withholding. It would tell you, based off this check times 26 pays for the year, here's what the annual projection is. So therefore, here is the withholding on this check. And so, I thought, well, that's really interesting. Now I can understand this and I can explain it to people rather than just saying, oh, it's based off withholding tables and whatnot, and just kind of trust the system, right? And, it's based off their election. So you can't really compare employee to employee. It's this whatever. I could actually see the math behind it.
Sure.
And I liked that, and I liked being able to explain those things to people. And I thought, well, if I can explain this software to people and why it's doing things, why can't I make more money doing this, right? Why can't I sell it to people? So that was kind of the idea. And that also comes out of, necessity, right? I started a family and I needed to be able to support my family. I needed to be able to make more money. So I pursued getting into sales. Ultimately, what pushed me over into sales was the company had a pancake breakfast. And I learned that there was a record of 20 pancakes had been eaten at this pancake breakfast. So I was going to beat that record. And at one point, took me a while to do it, but I was sitting next to the VP of the payroll sales division. And she was chatting me up about it. And she wanted to know how I did. She had to leave, but she's like, well, let me know, how it goes. And so I think I emailed her when I was victorious. We started talking. Eventually, I got into her group and started selling payroll services.
So, Dave, I'm looking real quick on LinkedIn. I want to put some dates in for people.
Yeah.
So it looks like you started as the product support specialist in November of 2007. So November's a good month for us, it sounds like.
Yeah.
You did that until February of 2011. So when that pancake eating contest, was that like January of 11 then, or?
It was in 11. So I met her. It would have been March. So we always did it after. So it would have been almost a year before I came on board. So right after the corporate deadline, because we're very busy in support, right? So they would say, okay, a couple days after the corporate deadline, I think it was March 18th, they'd say, let's take a break, do a pancake breakfast in the morning. So we met then, and then I interviewed probably. They had a position open later in the year, and I interviewed for it. I remember they strung me along for a while, and I got the job. I want to say in January they told me I had the job, but because it was an intercompany job and because support was so busy, they actually asked if I could said, can he stay through that March 15th deadline and then come over? So they said yes. This was kind of an interesting segue into the business, and kind of what I think led me into management someday too is, so even though I'd been hired, but I was still working the next few months in support, the sales team used the payroll software to kind of extract data from accountants who were transferring payroll. And a lot of them didn't know how to use it or couldn't get it installed on their computers. So I worked with the sales staff over the next few months to actually help everybody get it installed and help them learn to use it. So before I actually started as a sales rep there, everybody knew that I knew the payroll software, and they knew me, for a couple months before I started as a rep on the floor. So I think over the years, people gravitated towards me with questions, and eventually, I did become a manager on that payroll team.
So you were both sales and a technical expert. You were both.
Yes,
Excellent.
That's right. Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. So let's get into our faith real quick. So you and I each have a few kids, not together, of course.
Right.
Oh, it was a joke yesterday. We got some pictures taken for this podcast. It was interesting. But we've each got a number of kids, and religion and faith has been important to us. Why don't you tell us your story and kind of maybe the multi-generational story highlight as well as a teaser?
Yeah. So let's see, where should I begin with my story? Well, you always tease me that my wife is a better Catholic than me, right? and that may be true. I try and be the spiritual leader of the family, but we all know who it really is. So, and I will say that was something that, and on my spiritual journey, I met my wife many years ago. Interesting story. We actually kind of met in Austria. Steubenville had an exchange program, a campus in Austria. I went to visit my sister, met my wife there. But one of the things that I remember saying to one of my brother-in-laws when he was asking me about my girlfriend, one of the things that did attract me is I said, well, she's got a strong faith, and she would drive me to be a better Catholic. And that has proved out through the years. Another thing I always say about my wife, or joke, is that I would likely be working at a grocery store, working at a grocery store, stocking shelves, and probably have a, sometimes running old Camaro parked out in my driveway. That's what I would be doing. That would satisfy me to just, if I wasn't married with kids, but I am married with kids. So I've always had to push myself to do a little bit more than what I'd probably be content to do, with my life. So, it's been interesting. Yeah, my wife, you said the multi-generational thing. So my wife, when I met her, and I suppose before I met her, her grandfather was a deacon. And so, her grandparents started kind of a faith community. My wife and I, when I first moved here to Michigan back in 2004, she and I volunteered for the youth group, and we were adult leaders in it. I remember one time I actually I led a retreat they had, and it was, I was in my mid-20s, and I remember saying to the kids, there's no adults here this time, I'm in charge, because at that time I was I'm not an adult yet, but
right.
But so faith and community was a big part of our life, just because that was, her family was ingrained in that, and yeah, we'll have some interesting stories in the future about that too, with her family and faith and integrating that all in. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of some of the early origin story. We have a lot of kids. We have 7 kids. Faith has been a big part of that. I always say that what I really hope for my kids is not necessarily, it's not fame, it's not wealth. I hope, that they can always survive and, have enough to survive on. But what I really hope is that my children are more bold Catholics than I am. I hope I'm, giving them that framework with their education, by example. I hope that they are more bold than I am and go out and spread the faith. And that's one reason to have a lot of them, right? We can outnumber people, but that's what I hope. And so far that has proved to be true. I look at my kids and the things they do, and sometimes I feel like, oh, I'm not doing enough. My kids are working hard. They're putting themselves out there. And so my kids inspire me sometimes.
Can we talk about Mercy real quick? The story about Mercy in Hillsdale?
I love to talk about Mercy, yeah.
Yeah, tell that story about the gentleman who reached out to us and Mercy in Hillsdale.
Oh, I've got lots of good Mercy stories. I didn't realize that's where you're going, but yeah. So if Mercy ever listens to this, we could potentially embarrass her. But there was a young gentleman who I think had asked Mercy out. When Mercy started school, she was very young. I mean, she's been, I think she graduated from high school days before she turned 17. So she was away to Hillsdale at 17, which I was thinking about this just today. I remember when she was 12 thinking, oh no, she's going to be gone in 6 years for college. Like, life goes by so fast, right? And then I got cheated out of a year because I'm like, oh yeah, she's went through school faster and she was gone even a year earlier. But there's a young gentleman who asked my daughter on a date. I actually ran into him a few weeks later because I go visit her often enough. She's only an hour away. And I shook his hand and I said, nice to meet you. And I said, I must have missed your phone call. And he's like, huh? And I said, well, if you were going to be asking my 17-year-old daughter out on a date, I assumed you would have called me first. But that same gentleman, he's still around, kind of in her life. They're friends. You recently, coincidentally, ran into him, and he was asking about doing payroll services with us.
Yeah, he seems like a wonderful young gentleman. He's starting a Christian men's group for college campuses, and he reached out. They're just getting started. I think it's Legion XII, if I recall correctly.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And they're not quite ready for payroll, but hopefully this fall when they get the new semester, perhaps. But, yeah, we just started talking, and I had mentioned Dave worked with me, and his daughter was at Hillsdale. He had asked what her name was, Mercy. He's like, I know Mercy. It's like, I had to tell Dave this story. I just thought, small world. Yeah. So Hillsdale that Dave's referring to is Hillsdale College in Hillsdale, Michigan. So it's a wonderful school. It's known internationally, I believe, at this point. So,
yep. So you made me pause when I started to ask you about faith. We got into my story a little bit, how I got into payroll. So tell me a little bit about your faith journey.
Yeah. So I'm a cradle Catholic. Grew up going to mass every Saturday night. We were a Saturday night Catholic, and every time we went on vacation, this always was kudos to my parents. We would go camping with my grandparents, my great aunt and uncle, some cousins, aunt and uncle. There was a group of us who would always go camping together. It was one of my fondest memories growing up. We'd do 2 of these huge campouts a year, normally for like 2 weeks. My dad worked in the automotive industry, and there was changeover back in the day where they were switching model years or different cars in the shop, and they had some people help with that changeover, but most people were laid off for a couple weeks. So we always took advantage of that, and that was every summer. We'd go 1 week, one place, and then the next week we would go home for a day, kind of do laundry, regroup, go somewhere else. Always a point, though, is wherever we always went to mass. It didn't matter, and my grandparents would go with, and everyone else would stay at the campground, and I remember that vividly. It was a very good memory growing up, and I went to just continue the faith journey, went to a University of Michigan Flint. Nothing bad to say about the school. It just wasn't the culture I was looking for when I was 18, I found out. So I did my freshman year there, and I was telling the religious sister at the parish I was part of, Sister Ann, who actually just recently passed away about a month and a half ago. She was a Adrian Dominican here in Adrian, Dominican order. And I had told her, I'm in school, I'm doing well academically, socially, I'm not integrating well. So I told her this, and she took me down that summer between my freshman and sophomore year to go visit Siena Heights University, which is sadly closing in, I think, about a month and a half. But Siena Heights is sponsored by Adrian Dominicans, her order. So she took me to come see it, and I loved it. Same day I signed up, I got home, told my parents I'm going to Siena. So I'd be moving out of the house for the first time because I was living at home that freshman year. Well, lo and behold, I met my wife there in January. So I think it was 07 to 08, and then that would have been, January of 09, I met my wife. I went for the Walk for Life in D.C., the pro-life walk, and I was texting her way too much. The priest that took us kept saying, you need to be present with the people like you're around. And he's absolutely right. But I couldn't stop texting my future wife. And that was one of the things I remember. Another lady named Amanda went with us. My wife's name's Amanda. Different Amanda went with us on the trip because my wife had just transferred into Siena. And she had actually known my wife a little bit from the previous college she was at. So I was asking her questions about her, and it was a joke because we had a 3-way text going for a while because I was just trying to get to know my future wife a little bit better through this other lady. So, anyways, met her. We ended up. We've got 7 kids ourselves. I felt a call to the diaconate. So we're Catholic. So there's different levels, if you will, of holy orders. Diaconate would be on the lower end of the holy orders, but still a holy order. And I was actually in seminary in 2021 and 2022 for the Archdiocese of Detroit. I was not accepted into the program for various reasons. I am, especially at the time, I was even younger. I was early 30s. And for a multitude of reasons, I won't go into all of the hurtful ones, I was not accepted in. I'm not bitter about it at all.
I can tell.
But, faith is kind of, I would say, you look at COVID as like a pivotal, September 11th, pivotal moment. I remember where I was for that. COVID, I remember where we were in my relationship to my wife and my family. We had just had a house fire that previous July of 2019, and we actually just got back into our actual house the week before the COVID shutdown in Michigan. So it was an awesome time to double down on faith, on family, and business was good actually for us. I sometimes feel bad saying that, but it was slower pace. It was like much slower pace. Like just things weren't happening as quickly for a couple of years there. So things ramped up. I thought I was called to the diaconate. Tried that, didn't work out. So instead, we turned around and bought a few other payroll companies. So not necessarily faith related, but we had time. So we bought 3 companies between 2023 and 2025. So it was kind of exciting about that.
Well, I remember we met at Old St. Pat's for a concert during COVID. And I think you asked me how business was. I asked you, we both said, business is great. COVID was like a boon for the payroll business, right? It wasn't in the first few months because nobody knew what they were going to do. But suddenly with like PPP loans, ERC, all that stuff, like people needed help. And
March to June was slow, I would say. And then we started to rapidly pick up in June of 2020. And we really haven't slowed down much since.
Yeah. So I think listening to you talk, we could probably do a whole nother podcast just on faith journey. We could probably do a podcast on dating. We could probably do a podcast on college. But I did want to make a comment on that. Just a plug for anybody listening. College is a pivotal time if you didn't know that. And I think, and I didn't mention, I did mention Steubenville, but I went to Steubenville for a little bit. I finished school in New York, but that was a hugely influential phase in my faith journey, right, is being at Steubenville. And so I think it's important where your kids go to college or the influences that they have when they're in college.
Oh, absolutely.
So
I think it's important, Dave, to just mention who actually introduced you and I the first time.
My wife.
It was your wife and my wife met each other.
Yeah, right. So it's always my wife making the introductions.
We have to have them on now. It's like set in stone.
Yeah. So I was thinking about questions that were to ask each other. One of them, I think I had put was, like a funny family moment or something with your kids. But I think you might have already said something about it. You alluded to the house fire. Is that the house fire I'm thinking of?
It is. We actually, very quickly, I'll tell you this story. Very, very quick. So we lived in a nice house. I bought a house from the bank during the, when was that actually? It was probably 2012, I think I bought that house. Something like that, 2012. I'd bought that house. It was from the bank. It was kind of in disrepair. It had missing windows, missing floors, missing walls. And, I didn't have a lot of money at the time, but I had a lot of time at the time. So my wife and I, my dad, some friends, we fixed the house up ourselves. We didn't do the electrical on the second floor. We didn't really touch the second floor. It had the old knotty pine walls with shag carpet. We took the shag carpet out. Lo and behold, there was oak floor. Gorgeous. We refinished it. But didn't have the money to buy drywall, get drywall installed, painted, etc. So we left them. We redid the first floor entirely. Beautiful kitchen. It was funny during the fire. What happened was there was an electrical fire in the upstairs where we didn't touch. I just want to go on record. We did not touch that area. We thought it was fine. There was a loose wire, and insulation had gradually worked its way into the light fixture in the ceiling in the attic, and it started to smolder, and actually then started to catch a fire in the attic. Interesting story. Love my neighbor still. We still talk. There was some funny business going on with some fireworks, and the neighbors were kind of at each other over fireworks. Somebody called the cops on somebody. So lo and behold, anyways, one of my neighbors had the police called on them about selling fireworks when they shouldn't have been. So they're, I don't know if you knew this. I didn't know this. If you start to repossess fireworks, a fire marshal actually has to be on scene with the police in case of a fire. Lo and behold, there was a fire. It just had anything to do with the fireworks. So my house to their house is 100 feet apart. They saw the smoke coming out of my attic. I didn't know it was even happening because we found out our fire alarms, our fire smoke detectors, the batteries were all dead, and all of them, highly recommend getting integrated fire alarms where they're fed by AC power. Plug on that. I will just say we put those in after the fire. And the new house we live in now, it has it that way as well with battery backup. Primary is AC, though. Highly recommend that. He runs over. He'd already called 911 and his chief and said, "You got to get over here." My son was feet away from this fire in the attic. We went to go get it. He had a bunk bed in his bed. He was sleeping on the top bunk. My wife and I were watching television and talking downstairs. We hear a banging on our front door. And I get a little irritated when those types of things happen. I'm not going to lie. I got a little bit of German blood in me. And lo and behold, it's a fire marshal. He says, "Your house is on fire." I said, "Shut up. No, it's not." And he says, "I swear to you it is." I said, "You're not coming in my house." He said, "Would you just go upstairs then and look?" Okay, fine. You stay there. I will go upstairs. Lo and behold, I can see the smoke. I can see the flame. Grab my son out of the top bunk, get him downstairs, got the wife out. I did apologize to the fire chief guy, and mea culpa again. But by the time we fully understood what was coming and happening, the fire department was already outside. Because he had called them before he even talked to me because he knew what was happening. God moment in our life, and it was that time we lived in a hotel for about 8 weeks. I had, I think, 5 kids or 4 kids at the time. We were living in a hotel for about 6 weeks, then a rental house for about, I think it worked out to be like 7-8 months. Awesome time, actually. Probably it all worked out. We got a kind of brand new house out of the deal, got a more re-engaged family out of the deal. It reinvigorated our faith. That moment was also the catalyst that made me want to pursue perhaps the diaconate. So you've got September 11th is a pivotal moment in my life. I remember where it was. This fire on July 3rd, 2019 was also a pivotal moment in my life. So
that was not the story I thought I was going to get, because I was thinking about a different fire. That's
you're talking about the fact that my other son started a fire in my new house because he lit a box of toys on fire? Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
We've only had to use a fire extinguisher once and my son, who almost got burned, was the one who fixed that. We won't go into that.
I did not know that story. I knew the one about the box of toys in the living room or whatever, because I think we're doing payroll for that fire department now, right?
We are actually.
Yes.
You're right. We are. Yes, I live in Maybe, and we are doing the Maybe Fire Department. Yeah. It's a volunteer fire department. You're absolutely right.
So yeah, well, so again, we could probably talk about this stuff forever, and I think it's interesting stuff, but. We're also a payroll company, as we said before.
Yeah.
So, and we're a business. So I don't know if you want to talk about.
So the whole purpose of this podcast is we want new business. So if you're listening, you have to do payroll. No.
Talk about faith in business. I mean, I don't know if you've got a story or just any, kind of experiences where like faith actually, is involved in decisions you make in payroll or whatever it may be. I've got a few thoughts on this myself, but.
Yeah. So. Joe, you can correct me. So Joe is our producer, if you want to call it that. He's his company what is it? It's Colby Studios, right?
Mm-hmm.
Colby Studios, Maximilian Kolbe, the World War II priest who was killed instead of a man with some young children and a family. So he's actually on the back end right now. So he started his whole business as well based on St. Maximilian Kolbe. He's kind of going all in on his faith. So Workforce PayHub, secular business, 100%. I have clients who are Jewish, Muslim, atheist, Catholic, Protestant. We'll do business with anyone, as long as you're not violating the core tenets of the Catholic faith. I'll do business with you. We've had many conversations where we've got awful losing a grandchild or a child. We've had many instances of that. Just being able to be with clients and on a human front, nothing to do with payroll. Payroll maybe brought us together, but it's not where we stayed. So many clients are friends now. Many clients, we have more of a personal relationship. I'll talk faith with them, whatever their faith happens to be. We'll chat about it. We'll talk about world topics from a faith lens. That's that hope in the name of our podcast is, as dark as things look, whether it's in business, some people say we're in a mini recession right now. Others say, it's the best economy ever. It doesn't matter. It's bad for some people. It's great for some people. And if you happen to be on the the bad or the worst side of that, where it's not looking so up, there's still reasons for hope. And I like talking with clients about that alongside payroll. I have no issues with that. And I love doing that. And most of our clients have no issues talking faith as well. So you can't see it, but I've got a crucifix actually right above my head. And it's in all of the video podcasts that I do or the video meetings I take. And I think, Dave, there's one behind your head too now, isn't there?
If I move
yes,
a little
there
bit,
is.
Yeah.
So Dave's got one behind his head. So, if you're looking for a partner in payroll that you can also, have real conversations with, whether you're Catholic or not, I'd like you to be Catholic, but whether you are or not, let's talk. I want to make this more than just a transactional business. This has got to be a relational business. There are transactional payroll companies out there, .com companies out there that, they do a good job for what they are. But if you're looking for something a little bit deeper, that's kind of, whether it's faith or just wanting to have real conversations, that's us. That's what we're doing.
So you brought up the crucifix. Well, actually, first, before the crucifix, I think the reason we actually started talking, or our wives made the introduction, was because there were some things going on in the company I was working at, which I was struggling with, faith-wise. And, my wife talked to your wife, and you said, come work for me. And it didn't happen at the time. But the crucifix reminded me. So there was a woman I worked with years ago who we had different worldviews, lived different lifestyles, and she saw the crucifix at my desk in this corporate office, and I think immediately didn't like me because of that. It was kind of cold, standoffish to me. Eventually, we became friends, and she used to say to me, oh, I talked to my partner about you, like I was telling her a story about you. And she would always say, I tell her, Dave, what would you say? She would say Jeep Cross Kids, because that's how she thought of me. Is like, I had a Jeep. It was a really cool Jeep at the time. I had a Cross and I had a bunch of kids. So she was, always talking about Jeep Cross Kids. But, I think about that. I think about all the experiences I've had with people where I could talk about faith at work, and sometimes it was just conversation. Well, like, tell me about your faith. Tell me why you are the way you are. Things like that. Sometimes it came down to ethical decisions about things, and I think this is something that attracted me to your business is, the way that you intend to treat your staff, the people that you work with, your clients, things like that, and it's apparent that you care about them more than just when with your staff, more than just the work they're producing for you. You care about their lives, their salvation. It's apparent in the way you treat clients. They're more than just, revenue. They are people who have, their own needs, their concerns, their own schedules. That's not necessarily a faith-based thing, but understanding like people are busy and trying to work with them on the time that makes sense for them. And I always take the stance that people need to be treated well, and something that I've always kind of thought about too is all people's complaints have some merit. Sometimes you get a frustrating person, right? And like, they may not even like relay their complaint properly, and it seems like, oh, this person's just complaining. Well, there's usually something to it, right? If they're complaining, it's something to it. It's like taking the time to understand people and really get to the bottom of it.
Absolutely.
I think that's really important in the service industry, and I think that's faith-based, right?
And if you give enough grace, I've noticed, even for, people that just, always wake up on the wrong side of the bed, you give enough grace, you give enough patience, eventually they're going to realize, we're on the same side here, we're on a team, and they're going to work past that at some point. I've seen it happen so many times. Well, Dave, we've been at this for 40, longer than we thought we were going to be. It's 46 minutes almost right now. The Angelus alarm just went off. Why don't we close up here in a moment? We'll do the Angelus afterwards, and then we'll get ready for our podcast too. But why don't we rehash real quick, Dave, from your perspective? What are we going to show? Because we're not going to show them anything. What are we going to have people hear on our future podcasts? Like, what is the purpose, and what are some of the topics we may go over?
Yeah, so I think we'll definitely be doing payroll topics at some point, right? And sharing some knowledge, maybe some new things out there going on. I think there's interesting things that, with retirement plans, there's interesting thing about just changes in tax law that might be helpful for business owners to understand. Maybe we'll talk about just getting started with payroll and what are some tidbits we can share with you. But we'll be bringing on some faith-based people too. Lots of interesting stuff to come, I think.
No, awesome. Yeah, we're going to talk payroll. We're going to have folks on. Kind of the rhythm that we've kind of officially thought through was, about half of the podcast will be just Dave and I talking about whatever the topic of the session is. The other half, we're going to have guests on. They could be spiritual guests. They could be secular guests. Could be both. And if you know of people that we should interview that kind of fits this mantra of faith, hope, and payroll, we want to hear from them too. So always shoot us an email. You can do info@workforcepayhub.com or just check us out, workforcepayhub.com. But it's going to be a bi-weekly podcast every other week. So theoretically, every other podcast will be Dave and I, and then the other alternating podcast will be with a guest, assuming we can get enough lined up. So we hope you stick with us. Hopefully this first one wasn't a drag, and it was a little fun maybe. But is there any? Did we talk about doing a closer, like a closing line, like a zinger?
I don't know if we talked about a zinger. We talked about, we had our zinger at the beginning, right? So this is the payroll podcast you didn't know you needed, but you can't live without. So maybe we leave people with that.
Okay, that sounds good. Thanks, everyone. God bless, and we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Twice again.